Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now, in one of my recent videos you'll have seen me restore this vintage MEGO Robin from Batman and Robin, and very kindly Scott Greer sent me a couple of beaten up Batmans to restore as well, because he said, what is Robin without Batman? And I think he is correct. So let's take a look at these two figures and see what's wrong with them and see what needs repairing and restoring. So the first thing we need to do is actually work out what is broken on these figures. So let's take this guy first, which is the sort of the least broken looking version of Batman. His outfit is pretty rough. Actually, you can see there's quite a few holes and some sort of threadbare bits. Also, his face is pretty dirty, but mainly it looks like it's that sort of damage, and he has one broken hand, but we're really not going to be able to see fully until we take off his outfit and we can sort of look underneath and see what is wrong with him, and then we can work out what needs to be done. Actually, just taking this off, you can see the outfit's falling apart everywhere. All of the seams seem to be going all down the leg, on the heel there. So there's a lot of work needs to be done on the outfit to start with. And if we can take this off, it seems to be catching on his hand because his hand is pretty damaged. There we go. And pull this all off. So we can see that the outfit obviously needs some work, and the figure itself has quite a few chew marks on it, which I'm not really going to worry about because this is all going to be hidden sort of inside. His foot is damaged but not broken through, but really you can see the main problem is his hand, because his hand is on display. That is fully chewed up, so I think we're just going to have to try and replace as many parts on this as we can, but otherwise that's not too bad. A little bit of paint work on the face, and it also comes with, these are some reproduction dr.mego blue boots there. The other guy, which is, again, the face is slightly different. If we just look at those, he's got a different paint job. He's got a much darker flesh tone to him. Now this guy, immediately we can see he is missing one hand. In fact, the whole lower arm is snapped off and one of his knees is broken. He does, however, come with an original boot. If I can actually get the boot off. Let's just try and get that boot off. But you can see it's a bit more damaged, and actually the outfit is in not quite such bad condition. So maybe I could either do a sort of combination of just piecing these two figures together to make one nice one, or I might try and fix them both just to sort of get both of them as good as possible. So let's take that foot out as well. Take that completely out of the uniform. So you can see this guy's not in quite such bad condition. Really, it's just a broken knee there and the missing arm, and the outfit again is not in quite such bad condition. So we've got quite a few bits to do, quite a few bits to fix. I reckon we can fix both of these. I've probably got enough parts that we can get both of these back up and running. But I think the first thing we need to do is actually give everything a good clean. So I'm going to take these down and I'm going to wash the figures in just some hot soapy water and see what sort of marks we can get off the faces there. And I'll do the same with these outfits because these are quite sort of dirty, and we'll try and get that as clean as possible before I start doing all of the sewing. So let's go and get these cleaned up in just a bit of hot soapy water, and we'll see how they look after that. While we wait for everything to dry, I can get on with replacing a few of the limbs on these two Batman bodies. Really, the easiest way to fix these things is actually just to find some spare limbs. There are some parts you can fix and some parts you can't. Something like a broken knee like this, where it's actually broken sort of across below the joint, really you can't do much about that, so it's just easiest to replace it. And likewise, I could replace this hand, but again, I probably have a spare arm in my toolbox, so I think I'm just going to replace the whole limb. Likewise on this leg as well, it's got a broken ankle. I don't think I've actually got a spare foot at the moment, so I'm just going to replace the whole leg. So I had a quick look in my spares box, and as you can see, I have a spare leg, so that will go on that guy. I have two spare arms, because obviously we need to replace the arm on this one, so he can have the spare left arm there. Here's a spare right arm, we can swap that out and make sure that goes on there. And I think that's all we need to do on these guys. Obviously there's a right leg there, so let me just have a quick look. Oh, there's this guy here I brought out, which is just another figure with a reasonably good right leg. The body on this is a bit cracked and broken, so I'm really just going to swap out these limbs. Now I've shown you this many times before, so I'm not going to bother showing you again, as it's fairly straightforward to do, but really finding replacement parts is probably the easiest way of going on fixing these things. But check out my other videos to see the other processes that I've used when replacing limbs. And here are the two figures with the sort of replacement limbs in place. As you can see, this first guy actually doesn't look too bad now, and the head is in pretty reasonable condition. There's just a little bit of a paint rub there. This left leg that I put on isn't a perfect leg. You can see the knee is slightly sort of bent out of place, but really because this is going to go inside a jumpsuit, I don't think that's going to matter. And the guy on the right here, he still has some damage to this leg. Obviously it's been chewed, and a bit of damage to this upper arm. But again, as it's all under the jumpsuit, I'm not going to worry about that. Actually, the body on this one's a little bit rough around the edges, but he's still going to look pretty good when I'm done. So here are the two outfits after they've been washed and dried. And as you can see, this first outfit is not in too bad condition. There's a little bit of a mark here where the sticker goes on the front, so I'm not going to worry about that because that will be covered over by the sticker. And all of the seams are in pretty good condition. I don't think there's any holes in any of the seams. There's a minor little stain left on the back here, which I did wash quite well, but it seems to have marked a bit. But I think by the time the cape's on, you won't notice that. Now this other outfit, this one is in a pretty terrible state. As you can see, most of the seams have come undone. In fact, there's gaping holes all the way along, and some of the sort of material is starting to fray a bit. But I think we can certainly make this look a lot better. So I'm going to turn this inside out, and I'm going to carefully re-sew all of the seams, and we'll see how well it looks once I've done all of that. With the outfit inside out, it's much easier to see what is sort of come undone and what needs sewing up again. So I've got some grey cotton. I've also got some black cotton because parts of his pants need to be sewn up as well. And really it's just a case of starting at one point and working your way along until all the seams are sewn. This is going to take sort of 20 minutes to half an hour, so I best get started. It's now about 20 minutes later. I've done all of the sewing of the seams, and you can see they're looking an awful lot better. Some of the fabric is starting to fall apart, as I mentioned, so I've done the best I can around those bits. You can see here on this arm that the fabric itself is sort of pulling apart, but every other sort of place has been not too bad. All of the seams down the leg, which were sort of come undone, those have re-sewn quite nicely, and there was a few around the back as well that had a few sort of issues. So considering how rough that was to start with, that's actually not looking too bad. And I think by the time we put everything else on this figure, you'll hardly notice that this has sort of been in such a sort of sorry and tatty state. So now that that is done, I think we can move on to making some replacement capes. For the cape pattern, I went to the website megomania.com, and they have patterns for quite a few of the outfits in the Mego range, and they do have one for the Batman cape. So I printed this out. It's a little bit awkward to print out because it's not set up to print out quite at the right size. So luckily there is a ruler on it, so you just have to make sure that this ruler matches the sort of a real ruler. So this has to be 10 centimeters. It may be at some point I do my own version of this pattern that prints out without any of these hassles, but for now I'm just using this one. And you're going to need some fabric that matches the Batman cape. Now very kindly Scott sent me some fabric, which is this sort of nylon blue material, which is a pretty close match, and I thought I'd go down my sort of local haberdashery shop and see what they had, and they had a similar one. It's actually a bit more of a sort of a darker royal blue, and this is called lining material. It's very cheap. I bought half a metre's worth, which is a huge amount, and it cost £1.50. Unfortunately, this was the only blue they had, but I thought I'd try and make two different shades of cape. So I'm going to use the blue that Scott sent me, which is probably a bit closer to the original Batman cape, but maybe a little bit too thick. And I'm going to use the blue that I bought, which is slightly thinner material, but maybe a bit darker. Now, the way I like to work is I've printed out the pattern and I've stuck some double-sided tape onto the back of it, and I'm going to use this to stick onto the fabric so that I can use it to cut out. But obviously, double-sided tape is very, very sticky, so if I just take this off now, what you want to do is sort of loosen the stick on the double-sided tape. So I'm just going to stick it onto my jeans, and you can hear me doing that in the background. And this just takes some of the stick off of the tape, which means it doesn't stick quite so firmly to the fabric and makes it easier to remove in the end. So now that we've got that ready, let's take some of this material that Scott sent over, and I'm going to line this up so that I can get as many versions of this cape out in case I want to make some more in future. So let's just turn this over so I've got a nice flat end. And I'm going to stick this right at the bottom, so I think I'll probably be able to get 3 capes out of this material. I'm just going to stick that onto there, sort of lining it up with the weave of the fabric. And now I can cut this out, and I'll also cut out one of the darker blue material at the same time. Now that I've got both versions of the cape cut, there's a little bit more sewing to do. As you can see on the pattern, there's a dotted line, and that means we need to sew a very thin hem around this V section, and then these two sort of flaps at the front need to be sewn together, so we end up with a cape that looks like that, but with a hem around the top of it. So I have myself some blue cotton, and I'm just going to get sewing and sew these hems on both of them, and we'll see what it looks like. So really, it's another little fiddly job. You just got to carefully fold over this fabric and sew all the way along that V and back again, and then we'll sew the two ends together. So it's a fiddly-ish job, but shouldn't take more than about 5 minutes to do. So let's get sewing. So after about 10 minutes of sewing, I've now got 2 capes. As you can see, you end up with a cape that sort of has a bit of a cone shape to it and a little bit that goes round the front. So if I bring in the Batman MEGO doll, we can slot that one on and see how it looks. So that's the sort of lighter cape with a slightly thicker material. You can see that fits pretty nicely. And if I just take that cape off, we can try the darker blue, which is a slightly sort of thinner fabric, and see how that looks. Now that I think has a better sort of waft to it, but as you can see, it is a bit darker. So I may see if I can find a slightly lighter version of the sort of lining material that I used here. But it's quite nice that I've got 2 with a slightly different sort of tone to them. So let's move on to the next part of this restoration. Now we can move on to the paint touch-up that's required on the Batman head. I actually had a slight change of plan because since starting this video I managed to buy a Fighting Fists version of the Batman body. So I'm actually going to fix that one so that we've got one Fighting Fists version and one sort of normal Batman. And the Fighting Fists head, as you can see here, apart from the fact the blue of his hat is a lot lighter, doesn't actually have any sort of paint damage on it at all. So it's just this basic Batman that we've got to fix. Now as you can see, this is a particularly sort of reddy flesh coloured version of him, and I don't have a flesh colour that matches, so I've used a mixture of all of these to make a tone that matches. So I've used my standard 61, which is a sort of flesh colour that I've used for a lot of things. I've mixed that with a little bit of 238 just to make it this reddy colour, and that's made it a little bit too light. So I've then mixed in a tiny amount of black to darken it down and a tiny bit of yellow to get these sort of, it's a very strange sort of tone that's on here, but that has enabled me to mix a colour, as you can see here on my sort of mixture palette, that if I paint this onto Batman's chin, it's actually a pretty good match. But it's it's been a really awkward colour to sort of colour match, just because it doesn't seem to sort of match with anything particularly that I've got in my my sort of paint pot. But you know, you can mix and match these and you can get something close, but this one's been particularly awkward to get a sort of tonal match to. But you can see that this is pretty good. I'm just going to blend it in a bit, otherwise it's going to look a little bit obvious, but I think by the time that's dry you won't notice that at all. So Today's mixture has been very complicated, 4 colours to get the one colour that I need, but it certainly makes a big difference not having a chip on his chin. So now we're at the stage we can start putting Batman together. I've already put his costume on, so this was the original figure that I started on right at the start. So this has the outfit that just needed a few seams repaired on it, and as you can see it's only got one press stud on the back. Now if we look at the Fighting Fists Batman that I picked up, I've already cleaned this outfit as well and repaired it. So there's exactly the same repairs, but you can see this one has 2 press studs on the back, and the sort of opening actually comes a little bit further down into the sort of black pants area of the Batman figure to allow for the button that does the Fighting Fists action, but otherwise these are pretty much the same outfits. And again, these still have a few little marks on them. I gave this one a very good clean as well, but it's still got a little mark on the front where the stickers should be. So let's go ahead and we'll sort out the stickers. Now if you watch my previous video on restoring the vintage MEGO Robin, you'll have seen me make a set of stickers for Robin, and at the same time I also made the Batman logo, so we're just going to use that one. This file is available on toy-polloi.com, and this is something I've printed out previously on sticky back glossy paper, and that seems to work pretty well. The Robin logo seems to look very nice, so I've printed that out a few times and I have them here, and I've already cut them out because it takes a little while to cut these out. So here is one Batman logo. All we've got to do is peel off the backing, which is sometimes easier said than done. There we go. And then we can stick that. We're just going to use the sort of the little stain that's on the top there as a guide as to where that goes. That should just stick on like so. You always think that this should be something more than just a sticker, but the original one just was a simple sticker. I might actually make this out of fabric, just to, you can print onto some fabric paper that you can then iron on, and then if I stick that onto a bit of cotton sort of material, I think that might actually look nicer. So I might do that for myself in a future sort of restoration. And again, we have another sticker here which I can use on the other Batman just to make it look like Batman. There we go, that immediately makes quite a big difference. For the rest of the outfit we are going to use reproductions. As you saw at the start, there were a pair of reproduction boots from Dr.mego that came with this Batman, so I'm going to put those on the first one. And I've done a little order which has turned up as well in the post this last couple of days from Dr.mego, and I've ordered a whole load of more parts because it's just the easiest way of getting them. I've not been able to find any original parts for this Batman, so I've got another pair of reproduction boots which we can stick on the Fighting Fists guy over here. And likewise I've bought some belts as well. These are reproductions. They look pretty nice actually. These are all, they only cost a sort of few dollars each, so for sort of a placeholder I'm pretty happy to use them. At some point it would be nice to pick up original ones, but you know, that's a sort of long-term goal. As you can see, this is the proper belt, so it's got the buckle and then what look like sort of bullets or something going around, and this just wraps around Batman's waist there and then clips together on the back. I'm going to clip this one above the sort of fist action part on that Batman, and again immediately makes quite a difference. And we have another one here for the other Batman. There we go, that does really make quite a big difference. Here are the 2 capes that I made earlier. This is the slightly lighter material and then this is the slightly darker material. And again, while I was doing an order from Dr.mego, I thought I'd buy one of his reproduction ones. So you can see this is a Dr.mego one, and it's actually marked on the back with a DM just to make it sort of clear that it is a reproduction. And you can see that's actually a sort of midway between all 3 colours. So we've got a light blue one, the dark blue one with the fabric that I bought, and a sort of medium blue one there. So really I don't know which one looks best. I'm actually going to go for the light blue one because that sort of matches his boots on this one, and I'll use the Dr.mego one just on the Fighting Fists guy here, just because I have it, but actually I think my other cape with the dark blue one looks pretty good as well. So that's the one I made. Here is the Dr.mego one. Let's put that over. That was actually a bit of a tighter fit on the head there. So it's hard to say which one is best of these. I quite like the reproduction one I've done there, but the Dr.mego one is fine. Then the final thing we need is the gloves, and again these are just reproduction. And these seem to be a different colour again, which is a little bit of a shame. I was hoping they would actually match some of the blues on here, but these are really light in colour, so don't match particularly well, but they'll do the job, certainly for now. And again, I hope to find some original ones. Now, a lot of people on my Batman restoration said the gloves look awful, and I have to say, I always thought these gloves did look pretty awful. So my Robin has them just tucked in his belt, but I'll put one of these pairs on this guy and then the other one's in the belt, and then we can have a look at them together. And here we have the finished Batman figures. As you can see, he does look really nice compared with how scruffy he was when he arrived here. This guy on the right is the Fighting Fists one, and this is the original one that we started with right at the beginning of this video. As you can see, there's a little bit of colour difference in the capes and the gloves. I didn't actually manage to get the gloves to stay on this figure, so in the end I've just tuck them all in the belt, and I think the gloves are probably the worst part of this. They're just too light in colour. I was hoping that they'd be a sort of matching colour to the boots, but they're really quite a sort of sky blue as opposed to this sort of vibrant blue. So in the long run, maybe I can find some original gloves or a better reproduction set of gloves that have a better colour match. And as you can see, the Dr.Mego cape there is also pretty dark blue. I think the fabric that Scott sent me was actually a much better match and sort of suits the figure as a whole. So I think that may be a little bit on the dark side as well. But overall, they still look great. Even with the dark cape, that's quite good. I think I'm going to make myself another one of these sort of lighter blue capes, though, just to sort of finish that off. And as you can see, Robin now has Batman. In fact, he has two Batmen, so there's quite an army of them going on here. I've also, in the meantime, made my own version of the cape pattern. So if you want to get that, you can download that from toy-polloi.com. I've tidied it all up and made sure that it prints at the correct size. So hopefully that will be of use to everyone. So I hope this video has been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.